Dr. Fergus Connolly, welcome to the Petey Performance Podcast, first and foremost. Secondly, the big question that we all want answered is, were you watching the match yesterday and were you wishing for that ball to go over the bar or for it to go wide between Monaghan and Dublin? Because you're one of the few people that have a hand in both camps, I suppose.
Actually, I did. My mother texted me the results afterwards. I honestly hadn't been following it. I've got a call later though. It's with somebody from Dublin actually, so it'll be interesting to hear what their thoughts are on it. But by all accounts, it was a close game.
A great game, but it's a very strange one for you. Very much mixed feelings, given that you were there to start the legacy that Dublin Football has started, and now they may have got relegated from the league, but both of us know that championship is the real deal, and that's when it's important. So maybe they'll have a good championship campaign. We don't know, but at the same time, your heart is Monaghan, I'm sure. So it's great to see Monaghan.
It's funny. Way back. Way back when I was playing, the league and championship were so different, and even back then, remembering back to great Kerry teams, they never turned up in the league at all, and it was just about championship. But today there's not much of an off season anymore, so Gaelic football's all year round, so you can get a good idea how teams are going to perform. But you're right, all that matters is championship. If you're playing in September, it's a good year. So I don't think Monaghan can get carried away, and Dublin can't get too disappointed. I'd always certainly in Leinster anyway, taking Dublin for granted would be dangerous.
It's a very interesting one as well, isn't it? Because we're talking here about the end goal being the end goal and keeping the main thing, with championship being the ultimate. But at the same time, weekly results do matter to coaches. And they will say that we are focused towards championship. That's our bread and butter. But at the same time, if you're losing in the league, fans aren't going to be happy, coaching staff aren't going to be happy, and the players aren't going to be happy, because nobody likes losing.
No, and it's and you make some really good points. Like, to be honest, the fans, as a coach or a coaching staff, fans are the last one you should really concern yourself with, not out of disrespect, but you're the only one that really knows what's going on in the camp and how the team are progressing. But it does matter. It does have an influence. But as a coach, you kind of have to block that out if you have confidence in what you're doing. But there are a few things that are really important today in the league, and that is the practice habits and training habits and playing habits that you're developing. Those will matter, because come later in the summer, your players, your staff, even how they operate together, all of that's going to count. Like, if you're not doing it right in the league, you're not going to turn it on just come championship. And then the other thing that's really important, that I think some coaches sometimes take for granted, is winning. Winning is a habit, and the routine of winning, knowing how to win. And there are parallels between Dublin and the English rugby team at the minute. I think it'll be interesting come the Rugby World Cup. It's difficult to turn losing around. Whereas if you have a habit and a routine of losing, that matters in the last 10-15 minutes of a game, because you have the confidence to know that you've pulled out of games late and walked away with it, or you've withstood. So there are a lot of factors that really matter. The most important one though is practice, is training. How is that going? And really only the coaches and players know how well that's going. Is that a diplomatic enough answer?
That's a great answer. Really diplomatic. Future in politics.
No, but it is the truth, and I don't have any insight into either team. You know what I mean? So I don't know what's happening, but coaches, media, and coaches or media and fans, can influence mood, but really that you have to take that, looking at it critically from the outside, you got to take that with a pinch of salt.
And that's the thing, like, it is an outside influence, but it is an influence nonetheless. And the paradox for us as practitioners is we're trying to zone that out, and we're trying to say, let's focus on the process and focus on what we're doing in the day to day, whilst, as you said, still trying to get the results at the end of the week. So it's quite interesting, I suppose, to look at it that way. And I'm on the same page as you in regards to the English rugby team as well. I love what Eddie Jones is doing. I think he's doing really great, innovative things, and they're just coming out the wrong side of results, unfortunately. But to go back to what we're just talking about, Eddie Jones is focused towards the World Cup. Now, it is going to be hard probably to pull out of losing habits, as you said, and get that confidence back, but he's probably not too worried. And it's interesting how the tide can turn in terms of both the media and the fans, as you just said, so quickly, because he was doing a great job 6 months ago, and then all of a sudden it all changes. But that's our job as well with the athletes, is to help them to block out that noise.
Yeah, the other thing that and I get this question quite a lot, the game is the most important thing, and you want to preserve that. So, league games are very valuable in GAA because that's the test. So everything you do every week is leading up to each game. You don't, train through games, or, you might have been able to do that, 10, 15 years ago. Can't do that anymore because there are so many elements in an actual game that you cannot and will never replicate in practice. Like, even just the preparation, getting to the grounds, the game plan, players playing with each other, and the experience, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, intuitively in a game is so completely different from practice. So those games are valuable, like they're incredibly valuable. And if you start to take them for granted, it's a dangerous path to walk. But it's we're just coming into April now, but September will come fast. June, July will come fast. Forget about September. You got to make it to September.
Exactly. Now, we've jumped straight into the meat and the bones of it, and we've probably alienated a number of listeners already. But my first question was originally going to be, how is your morning going so far, and what is on the agenda for the day?
Just gone 9 o'clock, worked out, got home, a few emails, and this is the first call of the day. So, and then I've got 2 or 3 calls later, consulting calls, and then I'll get a short break, I think around 1:30. So that's what my morning's going to look like.
Well, I apologize for asking the really tough questions to start your morning.
No,
didn't even get you.
You
might pull a muscle. You're not straight. You haven't done an effective warm up, unfortunately.
No, I was up at 4 this morning, working out at 5. So no, 9 o'clock is good to go.
You're well into it. Brilliant. So for those that don't know you, I'm sure there won't be many that tune into the podcast, but my first question for you is, how do you define high performance? And then how do you explain what it is that you exactly do?
Oh, good question. Look, for me, particularly in sport, it's always been around winning games. Like, how do you win games? And I think in sport, particularly when I started, even still today, I think a lot of coaches have maybe lost focus on how you actually win games. When you look back in history, and you look back even just a few years ago, like you mentioned Dublin, Jim Gavin, people like that, it is about winning. But sometimes we get distracted about whether it's how fast someone runs, how far they run, effort, tackles, all of that. At the end of the day, it's how do you win games? And the industry, if you will, or the job has evolved quite a bit from just being a fitness coach or just being a strength coach now to managing all of the different elements that go into that. And we've learned an awful lot over the last number of years around what it takes to win games, whether that's data analysis, psychology, nutrition, lifestyle. But high performance today is really about making sure that they all work together well so that you win a game, not that you maximize any one particular area. And so that's really what high performance is. And the other side of it, though, is Eric Cressy reminded me of this some time ago. I used to say 80% of your job is knowing what not to do, because it's very easy to get, to follow the shiniest piece of paper or the newest fad. So much of your job is knowing, you know what, that's great, but it's not going to work in this situation, or it'll only work with these two players, so we should tone it back, or, so that's what a lot of your job is about, is, like you said it earlier, keeping the main thing the main thing.
There's great power in knowing what not to do. And my question to you then would be, what were the key events in your career that led you to come to this conclusion of kind of a holistic
Yes.
approach to performance? Because when we all enter the industry first, we're all worried about, as you said, how fast can they run 30 meters, how fast can they run 40 meters, etc. How much can they do in a bench press, how much is their max squat, how high can they jump? But in reality, that's probably not the most important thing.
The simple answer is mistakes. Like, I made so many mistakes. I made so many mistakes when, I wasn't a great footballer, but when I was playing, you're trying to be the best, so you try everything. Like, I did everything from running for hours on Bragging Mountains to sprinting up hills I used to have an old rucksack with a concrete block in my back. And so one year you're very fit, next year you're very fast, but you're in between, or you're not strong enough. Then some years you're too strong, you're too heavy. So that's when it started, with a lot of mistakes, and still making mistakes. Overestimating, trying things. Louis Simmons passed away last week. Like, I remember learning how to box squat and getting, almost too strong, things like that. And so, yeah, a lot of mistakes. But on the other hand, a lot of it comes down to being brutally cold and clinical about, what does it take to win? And not because we become very attached to certain things. Like, so we manage to get somebody strong, well, then that's the only thing, or we develop their fitness, they can run all day, and we don't want to change. But at the end of the day, you got to be brutally cold about, okay, that's great, but we're not winning, so what do we want to address? And sometimes the closer you get to winning, the harder it is to be really cold and brutal and step away and go, you know what, this is an area, or whatever that area is, we really need to focus on that. And sometimes, people are telling us we should do it, and we're so cocky, arrogant, or whatever. It's hard to go, you know what, they're right, but I don't want to. I'm stubborn. So yeah, for me, it was a lot of mistakes, making mistakes, and trying to learn from them as quick as possible. That's the most important thing. Actually, this morning, before we spoke, talking with a good friend, retired pilot, actually, military pilot, but we were just talking about the importance of failure and how important it is, not just to fail and not just to set up scenarios for players to fail, but to teach them how to overcome it, so that they can learn from that, but learn quicker and close that loop quicker and quicker and quicker. And sometimes, particularly as players get older, we move away from being critical, and we're scared to put them in that scenario. So yeah, failure is a good thing if you can learn from it.
It's like you just jumped into my head there and took out what my next question was going to be, because you've said there that you've made loads of mistakes, but everybody has made tons and tons of mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but the difference is learning from the mistakes. And it takes a special kind of person to be able to learn from all of their mistakes they've made. So what my question to you would be is, have you always been somebody that's been more focused on identifying the solutions than finding the problems?
No, really been more focused on trying to find correctly identifying the problem. Because I think there's so many solutions out there. You can pick and choose. And for me, it was really about from for a long time, really being brutally honest about, okay, what is the problem? Like, I mean, what really is the problem here? Because it's like, when you open up that toolbox, if all you have is a hammer, everything's going to be a nail without recognizing actually it's a screw that needs to go here. But you've got this brilliant hammer, you want to use it. Now I got to go in and find a screwdriver, and I got to go and figure out how to do this. And in a lot of teams, a lot of organizations, even with a lot of people you're working with, sometimes you're scared to really sit down and go, no, I'm not solving the problem. I'm solving something, but it's not the real problem here. And I think as well, I think it becomes more difficult as you get older to recognize, you know what, I'm good in this area, and you keep putting off this other area that you're going to have to address, you're going to have to look at. I think when you're younger, it's, you struggle with lots of things, you make lots of mistakes, you're in that learning cycle. I think as we get older, sometimes we're afraid to fail. So being humbled and continuing to want to fail, continuing to look for those moments of failure and learning from, I think that's really important. Humility is a factor. But I think that the best coaches have a type of humility about them. Now, you might not see it all the time, but the best coaches are always looking to improve. Like, what am I doing wrong? What do you think? They take criticism. That was one of the great things, working with, Jim Gavin, Declan Darcy, McDeegan, those guys, Shane O'Hanlon. Within that room, when the door was closed, it was brutal in a good way. Like, I mean, you were not afraid to say, you know what, I think this is really the issue, and really try and find out really what that problem is. On the other hand, today, as a coach, you're almost getting thrown too many solutions, whether it's technology or innovations, or years ago it was probably more supplement based. There's a supplement for freaking everything. Today there's even more solutions, but that's not your problem. Your problem is spend more time figuring out what the problem is. Was it Lincoln or Washington said, if I had 7 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend 5 sharpening my axe. And that's what the 5 is for. Figure out what the problem is first.
Does it ever occur that you sometimes spend too much time questioning whether you are focusing on the right details because you're like that and you're constantly refining your process? Does that cause you stress then?
No, and that's another really good question, because when you're in front of a group of players, or somebody you're working with, you very often, the most important thing is that they have clarity and security in the direction they're going. So while you might be still refining something, you've got the general direction, so you're going to start to move in that way. So as far as they're concerned, you know exactly what you're doing. This is what we're going to do. Now, meanwhile, later on that night, you're going to review tape, you're going to review film, you're going to constantly, have I got this right? And you might refine it. But in front of the players and when you're working, you have to, and you can't, particularly in stressful situations, in leadership positions, you have to make cold, clinical, fast decisions. So you get very, very good at summing up a problem quickly, identifying what you see at that moment in time, the real problem is, and you have to think at least 2 steps ahead, or second order thinking. So you just can't jump to the first thing, which many coaches will do. They'll jump to the first thing they see. You have to go very quickly through a few decision loops. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, that's what it is. That's what we're going to do. Now later on, you'll review it. Am I right? And so you get better and better at really identifying what the problem is. But yeah, it shouldn't cause you concern. For me, it's like, I describe, coaching often as driving on a freeway or on a motorway. You've got 2 lanes, fast and slow. You have to switch between both. Sometimes you got to make fast decisions, and other times you need to know when to move into the slow lane, just to take your time, refine, and then move again. You're never going to just stay in one lane.
It sounds like maybe in your early career, you were very, very quick to jump to the solution,
Oh yeah,
and you
yeah.
didn't maybe take a step back and think about it, and then actually grant yourself the time to deliver a clear message. Do you think you've got a handle on that now? Have you refined that over time?
Oh, I can always get better, but I think, you know, I learned early on, you know, working with different coaches. You would go to one coach, like a speed coach. Well, all your problems revolve around speed, so you fix that, but you're still not winning or you're not getting better. And then you realize, okay, then I need to go to an endurance coach or a strength coach, a nutritionist, and you go to, and they're all specialists. And then you slowly start to realize, hang on, it's really about identifying the right tool and then making it work for you or making it work for your players. And again, that comes back to failure, getting out of your comfort zone, being really brutally honest. But at the same time, you have to do something. Like, you can't sit and wait forever and plan things out. You know what I mean? The other thing you learn as well very early on is you can put the world's best annual plan together and step out in the training field and it's raining or something, or, you know, and you got to react. So there's a lot of things that go into being, you know, being a good coach.
I think over here we probably expect it's raining, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, like, you mean, or yeah, or you go out and suddenly the ground's hard, and you know, like, you're standing there, the ground's rock hard. Or you go to
Yeah.
your training field, ground's rock hard, or you go out in the training field, or you know, to do a warm up, and you realize, you know, something has happened the night before, and the ground's not safe. What are you going to do? You got to think on your feet quickly, and you have to do it with confidence, because again, uncertainty is, you know, creates a certain amount of insecurity, which could create doubt in players. So you have to be clear about, you know, how you're going to move forward, and they have to have faith in you and the program and what you're doing. But when
You
you
have to
make a
be,
decision, you have to go for it. Like,
yeah. And you can't be
there's no
rigid
doubt.
in your planning. You have to be dynamic. But what you've touched on there a couple of times is specialist skills. But you can't be that rigid specialist. You have to be somewhat of a generalist and know different things about different topics, I suppose, or different subject areas. So then, have you yourself over time intentionally sought out experience to become a better generalist rather than going down the specialist route?
Probably initially it wasn't intentional. It was more like, you mean, you know, how do you win? You know, because at the end of the day, that's what it does come down to. And there, you know, there's so many, you know, people. It's very easy. There's a coach, Dean Benton, an Australian coach, great friend for many years. He used to say it's easier to be critical than correct. And you know, being correct is winning. And you can sit there and poke holes in programs or in, you know, what you think or what you see other people doing. At the end of the day, if they're winning, they're doing something right. And I've had this conversation with somebody over the weekend as well. There's a lot of coaches out there, and you can look at what they're doing and criticize them. But if they're winning, they're winning. You can't argue with the result.
It's gas that you've become a generalist and a specialist in one, because your specialism is answering that one question. How do we win?
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, that's, you know, you search out, you know, you look at how other people are doing things, and you realize there is no one perfect way. And so you know, you early on in anyone's career, like, they're looking for a program, they're looking for, you know, a formula. Again, Charles Poliquin used to say it years ago, people just want a formula. But in reality, what you really need are a set of principles. You know, you need guidelines, but not everybody wants that. You know, not most people just want a formula. They just want to know, okay, just tell me what to do. So recognizing that in people is also important. You know, like, if you've got a group of players in front of you, some players, again, just tell me what to do. Other players are going to take a little bit more time. And the most important thing is knowing which is which. Because you start explaining stuff to a guy who doesn't want to know it, or a girl doesn't want to know it, you're going to bore them to tears. And the other person, if you don't give them enough information, they're not going to buy in, they're not going to trust. It's going to take longer. So knowing who you're dealing with becomes more critical as time goes on.
You're enabling people by giving them somewhat of a plan, though, I suppose, by giving them the principles, and then they can come to their own solutions. So you're allowing them scope for creativity, I suppose, which is something that you talk about quite a lot as well. So
yeah,
how then?
But that doesn't work for everybody. You know,
Yes.
some players just want, for example, some players just want really simple guidelines. Other players want to know the why. You know, so for example, you know, Stephen Cluxton would want to know the why and understand, and that's one of the things that made him great. There were other players like you know, Bernard Brogan, and you know, in his case, he just keep it simple for him. Not that he can't process lots of information, but that's how you give him the guidelines and he'll figure it out himself, you know. And so there's so many different personalities and ways of thinking, and you know, again, some great coaches just did it intuitively. Others like me, it just takes longer to learn.
So across that spectrum, then, are there ever players that you encounter that are both? They require a plan, but they also want the freedom to do as they please within it and achieve their own solution, or, I don't know, express themselves on the pitch.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there are some players who develop over time. You know, initially, for example, you might start with very, very basic guidelines. Like, I mean, just taking a team as a whole, you would start with, you know, very, very basic guidelines. Just do this, this, and this, and let's stick to this, get this right. And you establish a certain amount of faith, routine, and then you start to elaborate on the why. You know, because again, you take over a team in the morning, you can't start explaining everything to them, and you have to build layers on top of it. But some players will just check out at a certain level of layers of knowledge and the why, and knowing, you know, who needs it. Like me, the other thing as well for a coach just to keep in mind, a mistake I made many times was thinking that the player is like the coach. So for me, I would have to understand something before I would even do it, or certainly do it with somebody else. And so for me, I would go in, read and study, and I would go way back to first principles on something, like, I mean, to understand it. And then when I go talk to a player, I think they're like me, and I think they want to know. They don't, you know, they don't need to go back to that level. And I see it with some coaches, and they're explaining in detail, and you see the guy's eyes glazed over 5 minutes ago, and it's a reminder. There's a gap between what you know and what they need to know. Now, that doesn't mean that you lie or anything. It's just the level of detail you might need to go to is not the level that you might need to understand to implement it, or that you're passionate about. And so knowing that becomes, you know, a critical factor in keeping people engaged.
I'm the exact same as that. I have to understand it, and I always have been that way. My favorite word when I was a child, my mother jokes, was why. I was one of those kids, why? And the same as a player, like, I was always questioning, and why are we doing this? What is this of benefit to us? How are we going to do this? What if this scenario presents itself? So I'd be interested to ask you, were you like that as a player? Were you always questioning the coach? Because I call myself a coach's nightmare when I was playing.
Well, actually, I got in trouble actually at school. I remember being sent home from school one time because I had done something wrong, and the answer to my teacher was just. Because, like, I would keep asking why, and the answer I would get, you know, eventually was
just because,
yeah, you know, just, you know, we're doing it like this, just. And so I was very small in primary school, and, you know, my answer to the teacher was like, why'd you do that? Just, you know, and that, you know, so yeah, for me it was questioning, being curious, and again, some players want to know, need to know. It makes them feel comfortable, have security, and it's beautiful as well, because some of those players, when they truly understand it, you see them take it to a new level. You know, I remember one time doing video review, and I you know, called out yeah, you call it Paul Flynn, for something like, I mean, I think you should have done this. And he went, no, I shouldn't, because I didn't go to him because of this, and this that was happening. And he was right. He was right, but he was taking it to another layer, another level of understanding and appreciation for things that I didn't see in the field or didn't encounter. So when you start to see that, then you start to see, okay, this is game intelligence, at a different level, and that's beautiful when you see great players, take, like I said, take game knowledge, game plan, principles to another level.
Do you think that's a key quality then for a coach in being good at enabling that creativity to happen and enabling that player leadership, in that you respected his opinion there and you took it on board and you learned something from it, rather than, we both know that some coaches might know, I'm the coach, you're the athlete, I'm right and you're wrong?
Possibly, but in that case, you're dealing with very intelligent players who, like, I mean, and you could, at the end of the day, you can bullshit all you want, but it does come down to results. Like, I mean, what have you done? And sure, you can put your ego in the way, but you're not going to win. Coaches not going to win, and yeah, like, no, you just, if you want to win, you gotta cut out bullshit. Like, I mean, it's black and white. I can't make it any simpler than that. I can't dress it up any other way. You either win or you don't. Yeah, sure, your ego can be more important, but players see that over time, and it becomes distrustful. Players don't trust you as much because your ego is getting in the way. Your sense of importance is more important than winning or doing something right. Whereas if coaches who genuinely put winning first, yeah, they're going to get better buy-in, longer buy-in, and they recognize in you're also only interested in one thing, and that thing is, if players are here and coaches are here, that thing is in the middle. It's not owned by a player. It's not owned by the coach. It's in the middle. It's us together are going to win. So, yeah, it's just facts. Brutal.
It's brutal, yeah, and you've touched on that brutality a couple of times now, and that being very important and an integral part of a successful team is honesty and openness. Mm-hmm. But with that brutality, I can imagine that sometimes you might go too far the other end and it can be a little bit too critical. Have you ever seen that happen? Or, well, maybe it might not become too critical as long as it remains constructive.
No, it's actually Brailsford, British Cycling, used to use the term compassionately ruthless. No, when you get to that state of being brutally honest, there's incredible comfort, security, trust, love, essentially, because you know where that person stands, you know what they care about, and you know what's important to them. And so, no, there's incredible security and trust when you get to that stage. It never, like, I mean, initially, perhaps if you're sensitive or insecure, yes, it'll you might find it uncomfortable. But when you close the doors and you have that brutal honesty, it's beautiful. It's truly beautiful, because you know where everybody stands, you know what they care about, and you know that they're not telling you something to be hurtful. They're telling you something that's going to help everybody get better and improve. And I think that's one of the things that people want. They want, that sense of security that we all look for in every aspect of our life. It can only come about if you're going to be honest and truthful with people. So when you get over the initial discomfort, maybe, or ego, man, it's a safe environment, and you can say things to anybody, and you end up winning. You end up getting to the solution. You identify the problem faster, you get to the solution faster, and it's better for everybody, And there's a way to do it without being an asshole,
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's not that you're rude for the sake of it at all. Like, and
I completely
and
get you.
yeah,
Completely.
and people trust you. Then they'll come to you with problems because they know that you're going to tell them the truth.
But the three words there now, I was going to say two that you've used: understanding, knowing, and then trust. So is knowing and understanding the athlete and them understanding and knowing that you have their best interests at heart what then in turn enables the athlete to trust you? And then is that how you avoid the conflict that may be associated with having big egos in the room, and how you keep everybody in the room content?
Yeah, and I think look, everybody has, everybody has an ego. But I think when you've got that clarity around why, everybody's in that room, whether it's a business or a sports team, it doesn't really matter. But when you've got that clarity and that, clear vision and goal, and this is what we're going to achieve together around this objective, then you can move forward. Now, that's not to say that people won't have other struggles and other things around that, but you can support those things. And when you have that understanding, that knowledge and that understanding, then you can build that trust. And it takes time, it does take time. The other thing that sometimes people forget is that they think, oh, well, this is a sometime thing. I can do it with certain people. You have to do it with everybody. You can't fake it. You can't just do it with important players or market. You have to do it with everybody, because players aren't stupid. They see how you treat everybody, and in the back of their mind, they're going, no matter who they are, they'll look and see how you've treated somebody else, whether consciously or unconsciously. That'll sit in their head. So if you treat somebody poorly, disrespect them, if they're part of the team, or even if they're not, people pick up on that, and it might be just a subconscious thing. So how you treat everybody, you have to be fair. It might not be equal, but it's going to be fair.
Is that clarity that you're speaking about the clarity of purpose on both a team and an individual level that you're talking about quite often?
Yes. Yeah, you want to tie both together, and you want to find that those common values, and often you want to sometimes find a purpose that's greater than oneself. So, it may be a case that you're, for example, in Dublin's case, you're representing more than just yourself. You're representing more than your club. You're representing more than just Dublin football, but Dublin people and what it means to be. And so when you've got a purpose that's greater than oneself, people are prepared to sacrifice a little bit more, so long as they recognize that you're genuine about it. It's and that becomes, again, a very, very powerful thing. You see that in truly elite teams. It's not about it. Genuinely is not about them. It's rare, though. It's very, very rare. I've only seen it maybe in three or four environments where that is the case.
I would imagine like that is the pinnacle. That's what you want to get to.
Yes. Yeah.
But I would imagine there are and that's the holy grail, but it's not that simple. I would say that there's probably a lot of challenges that are presented to you in helping a group to identify their purpose, I suppose, and identify their values. Or has it always been plain sailing for you? Which I imagine it hasn't.
No. Like, you mean a place like Munster Rugby? It was, it was established. It was there. Some of the military units, it's there. It's reinforced. Dublin was a little bit different, I guess, because maybe, not that they didn't have it, but it was developed over time. So that was one where you see it implemented and developed over time. And so it takes time for that to evolve. And again, it cannot be lip service. It cannot be superficial. It has to be sincere and genuine. but you see it in other teams where you recognize that it's more about, you can recognize, teams where it's a little bit more superficial. But again, that's the difference between a team that will truly dominate, over a long period of time, and you don't want to be on the field with a team like that, because that's scary. They're going to be in your face
But
every
it's a
day,
learning
every day.
opportunity, isn't it, Fergus?
It's a learning opportunity, and if you're on that team, brilliant. But if you're against it, yeah, it's going to be a long day for you. It's going to be a very long day, and you know that even if you beat them, you're going to see them next year. You know what I mean? But when that happens, that's where you want to be. Like you said, that is the pinnacle.
That's the goal. But in order to get to that deeper level, I would imagine you have to ask some very tough questions. Has there ever been a time where those questions have been met with a little bit of resistance from the players, and how then do you go about breaking through that barrier and getting to the root of it?
Well, there's a lot of teams that organizations where where that's never going to work, or it's not going to work with the people in place. That's in those cases, that's where other factors are more important. Most often money, being honest, or fame or greed or ego. Yeah, in organizations like that. But again, that's just dishonesty. Again, if it is about making money or whatever, which plenty of companies have, well, then once it's out in the open, that's what we're going to work towards. Okay, that's fine. But again, that's the difference between honesty and dishonesty.
When you're speaking about helping teams to achieve their goals and high performance, it's clear that you speak about it with a lot of passion, and passion only comes with a purpose. So would you say that you found a real purpose in your work yourself now? And then do you think that is what helps you, and that authenticity is what helps you to help other people to then find their purpose?
Yeah, I think early on, I think everybody has, a passion or a purpose. You can go on a journey. It takes you a while to maybe come back to it at times, perhaps. But yeah, for me, I love helping good people do great things. Tomorrow I'll work with Fortune, I think it's Fortune 100 or 500 company, with their executives. And I love nothing more than working with them and helping them, because they are committed and passionate towards their goal and to what they're doing. And so it's about helping good people do great things and helping facilitate their learning. It's not about me. I get my reward is when I get an email from them later on in the week or something, this went well, or performance review or whatever it might be. That's rewarding for me. But that's me personally. For other people, it's figuring out, and it takes a bit of reflection as well. What actually makes you happy, as opposed to what other people, other people might clap you on the back and say, "Oh, that must have been great. That must have been." But it's for you. Like, what truly gives you energy. Makes you. What do you get excited about, or what do you miss when it doesn't happen? And those things, that's when you start to recognize, and you start to realize, yes, that's really what I'm both passionate and purposeful about.
And with passion and purpose, or I suppose the two of those are precursors for developing and knowing your own identity as a person. And you've spoke a lot about yourself there, and how you don't like to take credit for that kind of stuff. Like, that's not your reward. Your reward is when they say thank you, I suppose. So has identifying that purpose and passion for you helped you to establish a clear identity for yourself?
Yeah. I think the things that I have found most rewarding, most people, wouldn't know about or whatever. You might get an email, a letter, or a text from somebody, sometimes out of the blue, and and if I were to write them down, most people wouldn't recognize them or know them. But those are the moments that you remember, and that mean the most. Whereas you've got your identity, you've got your image. Your image is external. That's what others might see and think, and often it's just nonsense, you know. But it's great when you see it in others as well, where they start to recognize and become happier and more content in themselves as well, and more peaceful. And that's, yeah, again, that's really beautiful when you start to see it, you know.
And everything that you touched on there, it was all interactions with people. So has a lot of the value in your work come from developing those connections with people? And that's what really stands to you, and that's what gives you value in your own life.
Yeah, I think that I think over time, I think, you know, as people, we get reward from, you know, from helping others or giving to others. And you could argue that it's selfish because, you know, internally you get a sense of reward. But you know, it's anybody who's just looking after themselves, that's a lonely journey, you know, if they're greedy or they're just concerned with their own ego or what they can get. Yeah, you know, you'll meet those people. It's a lonely life.
I've struggled with that myself as well, because obviously being in similar industry, like we are in the industry of helping people, but at the same time, you have to kind of help yourself in order to help other people. And then sometimes you question yourself, am I helping these people to help these people, or am I helping these people to help myself? But I think that's a very natural thing for a coach to think about, I suppose. And I think probably it's something that you have to think about. And it's something that when you're in a role, you have to question, why am I in this role? Do I care about this group winning? Do I care about this person winning? Is this the right am I in here for the right reasons? And if you're not in there for the right reasons, then you're probably better spent leaving it, vacating that role, and letting somebody else take over that does genuinely care and connect with the group.
Yeah, or are they are they there for the right reasons, you know?
Yeah.
And you know, again, there are times when you have to walk away from a group because you know that you're just not right fit. And you know, I would do that. And there's even one currently, you know, I mean, group that I'm talking to, and yeah, if it's not a right fit, I'm not going to do it. You know, it's just, and we'll have that conversation and see, and if it is a right fit, and again, you know, the conversation with the head coach was, look, you know, sure, I'll come sit down, talk with you and your staff, and I'll be the first to tell you whether or not it's going to work out or not. You know, it's not a case of, yeah, absolutely, you know, you might want me, but yeah, I'll be the first to tell you whether it's going to work out or not. But again, that comes back to that comes back to being honest with yourself as well, you know.
But that often occurs, I would imagine, due to a misalignment of values between yourself and the organization. And in order to be able to make those decisions, as you just said, you have to know yourself and know your values. So only by knowing your values can you then look to help other people to identify their values. So that's a strange one though, isn't it? Because you can't know that for sure before you've had a certain number of interactions with a group or an organization.
True, and sometimes you can judge people, you know, without knowing them. So again, getting to know people. That's why, for example, with you know, with groups or individuals, you know, executives that work with, the first thing is always just 3 months initially, you know, and at the end of that, you know, you'll review it and go, listen, this is going to work, this isn't. But you get better at recognizing it. The other thing too is that, you know, so long as you know where people stand, you can work with them. There's a great quote by Malcolm X. I'm not going to, I'll send it to you later, but because I'll butcher it, but it's essentially, you know, recognizing, you know, somebody who you completely disagree with or somebody who's wrong, and being able to have more respect for them if they're genuine and authentic about it and about their positioning. Well, you can work with them because you know where they stand. Now, your values may not align, so it may not be long term, but you can work with that person. You can have respect for them because they're clear and they know where they stand. They know what they want. Well, you can work with them. But it's somebody who is perhaps either dishonest or not clear. That can be very difficult, you know.
I would imagine that the brutal honesty is very useful then when you're working with groups for 3 months, in that at the end of that, you may in fact have to say to them, look, you actually don't need me. Or as you
Yeah.
said, look, I actually am not a good fit for this role. Does that occur very often?
No, it doesn't. Usually what happens is after, short period, hey, can we extend this for a year? We want to tie this in. But again, that's, you generally, it comes down to how good, you are you making a difference? And also figuring out over time as well. John McCluskey actually was one of the best GAA coaches. He worked with Armagh way back. I remember him saying to me a long time ago, he said, never worry about publicity. People, if you do a good job, people will always, either recommend you. But what he was also saying was that you will revolve around the same kind of people. Like, you'll end up meeting the same kind of people over time. And so you end up, either spending time with, being introduced with. People will want to introduce you to people who are like you and who they know just intuitively that you're going to work well with. So as long as you're doing a good job and you're doing it the best way that you'll end up meeting more of those kind of people, because that's the circles you'll revolve around.
Has that made the delivery of your message and the language that you use a little bit easier, or have you still had to alter it based on the group quite a lot?
Not really. I think early on in everyone's career, they're searching for the best language that suits them, their role, their purpose in figuring out who they are. And I think then over time, I think you become, you know who you are, you know what you're good at. And people start to recognize that. So again, you end up revolving in those circles. You end up meeting people who are similar to you, and people who share your purpose, your values. But you also become better at recognizing who you don't want to work with, and there are coaches, well-known coaches, we won't mention names, like, you've been approached by, other guy, I want you to come and work with me. No, thanks, but no thanks, just not going to work out. Or and again, that takes discipline, but you see that more in more experienced coaches, because they recognize, sure, it might be glamorous or it might look good and they might need the help, but they're not either doing it for the right reasons, or they're not, it's just not going to work out in the long run.
Does knowing who you will work well with and who you want to work with, does that help you in, say, does that help you to more effectively leave a legacy behind you? And I'd be interested to ask you, is legacy an important thing to you?
No, legacy is not actually. It's not important to me at all. I think sometimes the word legacy is overused, in that people are more concerned about, what's going to happen after and when they're gone. No, I'm more concerned with this podcast, having this conversation, what I'm going to do later, you know what I mean? The call I've got later, the work I'm going to do. The legacy will take care of itself, I think sometimes as well, people are more concerned with the image or the perception, perhaps, rather than your legacy is going to be determined by what you do in the next 12, 24 hours. That if you're driven by that, legacy will take care of itself. I think where legacy is important is what you inherit, and the reputation, the legacy of others that you inherit, and living up to that. So I think, using Dublin as an example, there were many great, not just Dublin players, but Dublin people that, that those players were representing and had inherited. And so that's important. And it also serves a very important reminder that you're only a temporary holder of this shirt, of this position, of a role on this team. So that's where it's important. If you're worried about your own legacy too much, you're not going to do anything of substance. That's just my opinion.
I may have phrased that incorrectly then, because by the sounds of that, legacy is important to you, but it's not your personal legacy. It's the legacy of the groups that you work with. And that's probably why you're quite good at your job.
Well, that's
quite good might be an understatement as well. Dr. Connolly, I apologize.
No, that's for others to determine. I think you know, if you take your eye off the ball, which we all have done from time to time, that can be misguided, and I've had to catch myself before where a player comes to you who's not making the team or has just started with a team, and you're going, well, they're not the most important person, and you're not giving them your full focus. And you have to remember that no, everybody that you work with is important, and you have to make that difference, And so sometimes you can get distracted worrying about a marquee player or somebody who's more important, but no, everything matters. And so just back to what you said earlier, keep the main thing, the gator closest to the boat, focus on it, do the best that you can. When you get some time in the evening or, to reflect, that's when you can reflect on, the bigger picture. But you have to do, a good job every single day. That's how you build a legacy.
And there's parallels between what you've just said in taking it day by day. And I would imagine with writing a book, because you have to take it page by page. And that's something that you have a lot of experience with. And in a way, your written works will be somewhat of a legacy for you as well. So my question would be, are you working on anything currently? And I know that you're not focused on the legacy, you're focused on solving a problem, and a particular problem with each work. So is there any problems that you identify now? You may not be working on something currently, but anything in your head that you're thinking, there's something there, I might try and solve that in the future with another piece.
Oh yeah. Like I've 3 different projects at least going on. Now I probably won't turn them into books. I'll probably turn them into more courses. So I took all of my sports work, put that into one team sport masterclass. The other things that I'm currently working on are one of them is around what I call amplifier skills that regardless to your area, whether it's in military, business, or sport, these are key skills that you need to develop. Another is around performance psychology or understanding mindset. There's another one around lifestyle, but whether or not they'll end up being a written book or not, I'm not so sure. The interactive, the video, the courses leave it easier to update and add and then respond quicker to questions. But you're right, like a book or written book can be somewhat of a legacy. For me though, I use them to clarify a lot of my thinking, because for me to be able to coach someone or to coach a coach, I have to be able to explain it, and I learn an awful lot in that process. I wrote 4 books with Cam Joss, started a few years ago, and I got more from that interaction, possibly than anything, because of explaining topics or him saying, no, this is wrong, and saying, well, no, this is how I look at it, and those kind of things become more important, and so that there's a huge learning process in it. So yeah, it might seem altruistic, or it might seem as though you're doing it for someone else, but I get a lot from it, because in order, again, like I said, explain something, you have to be able to clarify it in a really important way. And for coaches, your communication skill, how you communicate, that's very, very important, obviously.
Is that a way you like to work? You like to just compile a lot of information together and make it digestible, I suppose, so that you can understand it, and then whatever it turns into, it turns into.
Well, if I can't understand it, I'm getting no hope of either implementing it or then even educating somebody else on it. As well as that, for me, working, so if you take sport, working in team sport, there's not many people, it's a small enough community. So being able to, I have to understand it, apply it, implement it, figure out how it works. And so that journey that knowledge or information goes on, that can be helpful to somebody else, what worked, what didn't work, mistakes I made. And, most of what you do is a mistake, a lot of what you do is a mistake, is an error, or you could do it better. Like even the books, there's things I look at in Game Changer. Oh man, that's phrased a little. Now on reflection, I should have phrased that a little bit differently. Those kind of things you look at and go, or it's evolved. My thinking has evolved in this. There's another layer to this. But that word, actually, I should have used intuition rather than instinct.
A lot of people that will go and look you up after this and look for your presentations, now that we've spoken about this, will probably go to the most accessible of them, which is your TED Talk. And I'd be interested to ask you, like, you could have presented so much information as we've just gone through there, like on team sports, on athletic performance psychology, etc. But was that what happened? You just sat down, said, right, what am I going to present on? Got the information, put it down on paper and said, do you know what? This is what I'm going to present on. This is going to be the most powerful message that I can deliver.
Yeah, and sometimes, people might look at you and go, okay, you've done this, and this, and everything's perfect. Well, no, there's lots of screw ups, and this is a mistake, and this is a lesson I learned from it, a lesson that I hadn't learned at that time. I think is an important lesson for people, certainly in sport, but in life, that you are going to need to lean on people. And I was fortunate as well. It was also a way of even in Game Changer and in 59S, it was a way of saying thank you, as well, to people who are there for you when you need it, and also a reminder to be there for others, to look out for others. So I think there are times when people can look at things from the outside and go, well, everything's perfect, it's a clear run. Heck no, I've had so many setbacks, screw ups, failures, mistakes. But the important thing always is to learn how to recover from them. And I'll never forget, it was a sniper instructor, Navy SEAL sniper instructor, telling me about creating tasks that were impossible, that guys were not going to be able to complete, to teach failure, to teach how to manage failure, how to overcome failure. I think it's very, very important for young people today that they do fail, and that they learn how to overcome it. That doesn't mean that you make life incredibly difficult, but those people who struggle, who learn to overcome, who do overcome, and who learn how to learn, that's the most important skill for young people. So making things too easy for young people can be a disadvantage.
And you're quite interested in learning about people, I would suppose, because that's what you talk about. We're in a people business. So I thought it may be a useful exercise, and maybe it might be quite difficult exercise, but we'll have a go at it anyway. If I could ask you, what was the most valuable lesson that you learned about people from potentially a group that you've worked with, and that maybe from a mistake that you've made that you can share with us as well? So the first group that I wanted to ask about was Bolton Wanderers. Very intrusive, very intrusive style of example, but we'll give it a go anyway.
Yeah, I learned so much at Bolton. And that was like that's a while ago now, and so there's so many different personalities. Like Sam Allardyce, who just left. Little Sam was there. Sammy Lee. We had, the late Gary Speed. Just great guy. One of the most amazing people. For example, Gary treated, actually the only guy similar to him would have been Colin Kaepernick. Treated everybody the exact same. like genuine, lovely guy. Learned a lot. Like, I mean, it was no surprise that he had such a long career. Like, longevity mattered. I think even at that time, he had still had the record for the most Premier League appearances. Joey O'Brien, Dublin player. I learned so much from Joey. We would go for dinner every now and then, maybe once a week. We go. Like, I mean, yeah, I would learn so much from Joey about hard work and, you know, his pride that he had, not just in being Irish, but being from Dublin. El Hadji Diouf was there at the time. We had UC Yaskalainen. Yeah, there were a lot of lessons around people, different backgrounds. And that was actually what was unique about Bolton at the time was, like I've just listed, people from so many different backgrounds, Kevin O'Brien, I mean, people from so many different nationalities. It was like a melting pot. Phil Richards was a strength coach, great guy. Yeah, he was so good to me. Amir Khan trained there for a while as well, another personality. So the lessons, man, there were just so many. It was like a school day every single day.
And it was a great introduction, I suppose, for what you'd go on to do afterwards. And the next group, I suppose, that I wanted to ask you about was working with the Welsh Rugby Union and what you took from that experience.
Yeah, so the biggest difference there was you're dealing with a national team, so they all had clubs to go back to, just like Dublin. So again, it was a great introduction there. And then you had, like, you know, you had a national identity, which you weren't part of, but you were part of, but it wasn't yours. So many great personalities, like Warren Gatlin as a coach, very unique, different style, great leader, more reserved coach. So he very much empowered his coaches, a great supporter as well, a great empower. Learned a lot from him about not micromanaging, empowering you and trusting you to do work. He was, yeah, so again, so many personalities. Like, you had players like Shane Williams, Martin Williams at the time as well, who was a legend even in Wales at the time. Sam Orbit and Ryan Jones, yeah, just so many great players, George North. And so Lee Halfpenny, so you're dealing with players, some of them, you know, more experienced veterans, then you'd younger players coming in. The academy system in Wales, you know, was very good. So you had players coming in that were very well prepared. And so that was different, you know, again, so all of those things to learn. And I think the most important thing for a young coach, well, so many important things, I've probably said that too often now, but is recognizing that there's so many opportunities to learn. Like, so many coaches are in environments and they don't realize, like, it's a gold mine for you to learn from, you know?
So the next one is a little closer to home for me. And it's, what did you learn from working with that wonderful group that was in Munster Rugby at the time that you were there?
Oh, well, yeah, like, I mean, O'Gara, Callahan, Paul O'Connell, Stringer, people like that, just great coaches. Tony McGann was the head coach as well. Axel Foley, God rest him. Last time I saw Axel was in San Francisco. He reached out to me when he was over, and yeah, like that, you know, just, yeah, really great people, very authentic, very honest, you know, brutally honest. And I think, you know, Paul O'Connell, Ronan O'Gara, like Donnacha O'Callaghan, great people, particularly when you sit down one-on-one with them, and their ability to, like, to be brutally honest about what they were trying to do, struggles they had, and again, just wanting to win, and very, yeah, very, very honest about their performance and wanting to get better. And it was great. It was great for me because it was like, you're, again, they were already legends, but recognizing, yeah, this is what greatness takes, you know. And that was, again, another great experience for me. That was the first Irish team or Irish people that I'd ever worked with.
And I would imagine learning about what greatness takes and that desire to win was very useful when you went to work with Dublin then after that.
Yeah, Munster was good for me because that's not to say that Bolton or Wales didn't want to win, but Ronan Garrett do anything to win. Like, you mean, I was at home, there. Like that's where I wanted to be. Like, you mean, whatever it took, and no nonsense. I remember, I remember him saying to me one time, congratulated on some kick or something, late in the game, win a game, and he just said to me, "Postman doesn't get medals for delivering letters," and he just walked off. Like, I mean, that's just that again, brutal honesty. Dublin was great. The backroom team were outstanding. Never worked with a group quite like them. The players, yes, obviously great players, but Jim, outstanding manager and coach. Very, very humble, very knowledgeable, very, very bright, great people person. I think, in years to come, I don't know if people would truly give him the credit. Like, it's difficult to win All Ireland. To win repeatedly, that's just it's on such a different level. It takes a completely different style of management and coaching that it's as rare as hen's teeth. You'll never see it again. Like, I mean, not a hope in hell. It'll take generations for anything close to that to come again.
But that's it as well. You don't appreciate people during it, and you don't appreciate how difficult it is to do until they're gone, I suppose. And it's only now that they may go into a period where they won't be winning as frequently that he may get the credit that you're just speaking about right there.
Yeah, I was very aware at the time, even before we started, that's what the goal was. And so I was very conscious that at the time, and maybe that was just experience, but I was very conscious of how special this was. Like, I mean, because, you'd seen bits of it, you knew what it took, but to see it in action, be there, I was grateful that, I was older. If I'd been, in my 20s there, I probably wouldn't have. But yeah, you're in your 30s, you're doing something and you're there, you're going, this is something special, and fortunate to be part of it.
And I'm going to skip over a couple of organizations that you worked with, because I think there's one organization that you were working with that you probably have the most powerful message for young coaches, and that is when you were working with the University of Michigan. So you've spoken about how you've learned things that you can use to help other people, but what did you learn there that helped you to help yourself?
Well, I think 49ers or Michigan, the cultural changes are different. I think that's one of the biggest things. I think making sure that that you keep a balance in life and taking time. But actually, the most important lesson that I learned as a coach was at the University of Michigan, actually, years before. It was a guy called Carlo Gianfranco was his name. And I was doing my PhD at the time. And he came into the building that I was staying at during the summer. There was nobody around, and he was staying for a few days. I didn't know who he was. I just knew that this guy was going to be staying in the same area for a few days. And, I didn't pass, much regards on it. And he was in and out. We didn't get talking. But one evening, I happened to be in the communal area and was watching TV. And he came in and sat down and started talking. He was an English guy, English accent, big, tall guy, really nice guy. And, he was only going to be there for a while. I was busy, I had a lot on my plate. And it was late in the evening. And he's joined me to, can I join you to watch TV? So we were watching TV for a bit. And, what are you doing here? And I was doing a PhD at the time. What are you doing? I'm the dance. I'm here to do some work with the Micheál O'Sullivan School, at dance school or music school. I have no interest in dance, no interest in music. Whatever. Not going to help my PhD time. Nothing to do with sport. I'm going, Like, I didn't leave. I didn't leave that room until maybe 2 or 3 in the morning. I got talking to him. He started to tell me about his career in ballet, working as an understudy for Nureyev, working in Hollywood, and it was an eye opener for me, because yeah, I'd almost dismissed this conversation or this person, more shame to me. But as I got talking to him, there was so much to learn from him. He was so kind with his time, and that was a humbling moment for me, because on reflection, I was, if not almost rude to him, and I was getting up to leave, and hours later, I'm there taking notes from him about performance. And so that, I think, is the most important thing for young coaches. Like, it taught me a lot subsequently about even going to a restaurant, about what I can learn from the sommelier here in where I live in just outside LA, and the place was set up for me by a friend. But again, just questioning him on how does he approach people at the table? How does he judge what wine to recommend? How does he know, like, not about the wine necessarily, but the personality? How does he judge? What questions he asks? And all of that is related to coaching, like how you communicate with people, how you interact. So that, to me, for coaches, a lot of coaches go, "Oh, they're not coaching at this level, I can't learn." No, you can learn from anybody if you want to. That's what young coaches should keep in mind.
That's an unbelievable insight, and I'm happy now to move on to our quick fire questions before we finish. So the first one is your proudest achievement to date.
I have 1 or 2 relationships, I think, or text messages from people that mean a lot to me. There's a few guys who in the military have done just exceptional things, who I'm very grateful for to have friendship with, and those things are probably the things that I'm most grateful for. Those relationships, which again, to the outside person, probably doesn't, wouldn't mean anything necessarily, but those relationships, and that's probably the thing that I'm most grateful, if you can say proud of. It's not a sporting thing, it's not a team thing or anything like that.
We've had it before as well with a couple of coaches, and I think it's a good thing to be proud of as well. Because it's a very real thing to be proud of. So the next question then is a little bit less deep, but something that you'll definitely still be passionate about, is your favorite athlete of all time.
Oh, wow. There isn't really one, the greatest athlete, you mean, of in my opinion, of all time?
Your favorite doesn't have to be the best.
My favorite is probably, it has to be Brady. It has to be Tom Brady. Yeah, I've never coached him, never worked with him. Been fortunate to meet him a few times, but just the ability, again, just like Jim Gavin, the ability to repeatedly win, that's special. Winning once is possible. Anybody can do that, but repeatedly, no, that's a different level.
Yeah, and he's the best at it as well. And hopefully it comes to fruition for him again this year. It'd be very interesting to happen, and it would be a great way to finish a career if he does indeed finish, which he may or may not.
Correct. Yeah.
Next question is one that I'm interested definitely to know your perspective, or see who you pick. But what's your favorite, or who is your favorite obscure footballer or obscure footballing moment of all time?
Matthias Sammer, German soccer player. He played in the libero role, which doesn't really exist, but similar to Franco Baresi. He had quite a short career with Germany, but would play deep and would just come running through the middle repeatedly. An incredible player. That's probably the most obscure. after that, maybe Paolo Maldini, not really as obscure, but yeah.
Two great players in their own right, though. And that libero role is so interesting because, as you said, it doesn't really exist as such anymore, but it was a position for really a total footballer in a way, I suppose, somebody that would be comfortable playing in any position.
Yeah, it had to be supremely fit. I think probably I think Roy Keane during his peak years played that role. And again, there's another phenomenal athlete who played for a long time, much longer than Sammer, of course. But yeah, that role is a difficult role to play because you have to be able to both, tackle, play with others, and score as well.
Are there any players that you see in the modern day that you think could play in that role? To go off topic a little bit.
Oh, I don't get the opportunity to. I actually don't make a lot of time to just sit and watch sport. Like, I mean, I will from time to time, but I haven't watched a GAA match since last match I probably watched was the last Dublin game that Jim coached. The replay reviewed that. That was one of the last ones. Soccer, I haven't watched that many soccer games recently. I went to my first NFL game as a fan. Actually, probably the first game I've been to in a long time. Last year, I went to watch the Cardinals against the Panthers in Arizona, and that was a shock because I hadn't been to a game as a fan, for a long time. So I don't get to watch sport, and to enjoy it, and I'm there watching. I'm watching body movement, angle position. That's what I'm watching. So it's just so I try and for me
switch off.
I unwind doing it. Watching other things other than sport.
Absolutely. So then, in that unwinding, what is the biggest thing that you've learned in the last 12 months?
Oh, so much. Like at the minute, I am working my way through a book on grieving and bereavement. That's again, like there's so many different things that I got a bundle of books back here that working through another one on Plato, believe it or not, and Socrates. So there's so many topics that I've worked through. There's so many different things that I've learned, and again, they come about through problems that I'm working with groups, and how to again simplify it and put it into practical protocols for people to use, and be able to explain it in a simple way that they can apply. So there's so many different things. I'd have to think about one particular thing.
Well, I'm afraid I'm going to ask you about one particular thing now, because I'm going to ask you, of all those things that you've learned, what is the one thing that you would tell your 18-year-old self?
So people say, oh, is there something you would change or something? No, I wouldn't change a single thing. I think that, you go through life and you can choose to, I don't have regrets, at all. Sure, there are things I would rather not have done, but at the end of the day, you do them with, your best interest, your best, best meaning. But so long as you learn from them, I think that's the most important thing. So, my 18-year-old self, I don't, maybe just skill is important. Skill's more important than fitness. If I had to, that's what I would tell them. Yeah.
Okay, great stuff, Fergus. Thanks a million for coming on. That was
thank you.
Unbelievable.
Delighted to be asked. Thank you.
Appreciate it, and we just flowed straight through it. So again, thanks a million, and I'm sure loads of people will take loads of learnings from that, which is why we're here at the end of the day. So have a good day, and I'll be talking to you soon, I'm sure.